Hi, and welcome to this week's corporate show with me, Manjit Niji, your host. And this week, we're actually going to talk about Lean Six Sigma, what it is, how it works, why it's important to your organization, how it can help you to move forwards and so on. And in order to discuss all that, I've got a very special guest with me, John Dennis, who is the subject matter expert in this field, and what he doesn't know is not worth knowing. So John, after that introduction, I'm going to hand over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Thank you, Manjit. Yeah, great to be here. Yeah, well, I started my journey in process improvement back in the United States, actually, in the late 80s, when I started with a process improvement and process controls company in Florida called Instrument Control Service. So it was all about controls and process automation. And I did a lot of work in some of the southern big paper companies, textile companies, and chemical companies back then. And in the 90s, that's where I cut my teeth on understanding processes. And Lean Six Sigma was not as popular and well known back then. In fact, we didn't talk about Lean Six Sigma as much. It was just starting in the early 90s to become popular or just discovered, really. And books were starting to be written about the subject of Lean Six Sigma and Lean and Six Sigma separately.
Yeah, because I mean, when you and I met all those years ago, well, like a long time ago now that we met,
Yeah.
what, 8 years ago, something like that, when we first met. I'd, in my role as a IT service manager, had been involved in the improvement of processes and systems and services, and used Lean and Six Sigma and so on. But then when we met, you kind of brought it all together for me, because I was delivering the training myself.
Yeah.
But I learned so much from you, and the stuff the way that you melded it all together was absolutely brilliant. So if you can kind of elaborate a bit on what you do and how it helps.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter what you call it, actually. Back in the 90s, we talked about total quality management and business process re-engineering, and a lot of the same tools and techniques are used, the same concepts and principles are used in these different areas, and we're calling it now, mainly calling it Lean Six Sigma. But it's about making processes easier and simpler. So cutting out the waste, cutting out the unnecessary steps, making it as simple as possible. Improving the quality of the output of those processes. So having less defects, less deviation, less variation, less defective items. It's also about on-time delivery. So on-time in full delivery that you've probably heard about. Often a challenge for businesses. And lastly, it's about then reducing the costs of the process, which comes as a result of the other three areas of easier, better, and on time.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the objective of Lean Six Sigma, but it was also the objective of total quality management, business process re-engineering, and many other names. Operational excellence, have been continuous improvement, have been given to these to achieve these basic objectives.
Yeah. So why the switch then? I mean, in your opinion,
Right.
what happened?
Right. Exactly. Why the switch? Well, I think some of it is down to what is popular, which authors are popular, who is pushing the wording, the language that's used, and it might be a little arbitrary which one actually catches on the most. Once a particular name for a discipline becomes popular, then it will gather momentum like a snowball rolling down a hill. The more people that talk about it, then you get more and more people talking about it. And I think Lean Six Sigma in the early 2000s to mid 2000s started becoming the name of choice and training companies started promoting that as the name of the subject to do with process improvement more than other subject names.
Yeah, because from my perspective, you know, in my world in ITIL, as you know, there's a whole element called continual improvement. Continual improvement is doing exactly that. It's looking at where the waste is, how often are we creating it, how do we do the good stuff, and it's about then improving on that. So the tools that are within Lean Six Sigma, as we're calling it, you know, what I love about it is that you can extract from that and then put them into so many different other methodologies and frameworks to help you to get to where you need to get to.
Yes. Some people are at the level of what we call green belt or black belt and don't even know it because they've actually been working in operations management for decades, and they're doing all of these things. They know these principles and they're applying these principles. They just haven't called it Lean Six Sigma. So I never like to get people too caught up in the name. In fact, the name can be a disadvantage because it's a bit of a complex sounding name. Six Sigma, people don't understand why is it six and what's this Sigma business, and lean can be confused, of course, with all sorts of things from dieting to food and lean bacon. So it's a bit of a confusing name, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so if somebody's coming into this completely new, interested in going on training, learn more about Lean Six Sigma, I mean, what would you, and what advice would you give them if somebody's trying to get into their foot into the improvement side of things? What advice would you give them?
Well, my advice is to somewhat play the game and get the certification with the name on it, which is popular and most well known at the point in time when you're applying for a job. So educate yourself about what are the keywords recruiters are looking for. And if you put down total quality management on your resume, your CV, then you're not going to get have the appeal or get the attention that you would get if you put Lean Six Sigma, even though you might know 90% of the same things. So you have to be familiar with what HR departments, what recruiters are looking for.
So from an organizational perspective then, whatever size the organization, is Lean, you know, is Lean Six Sigma, it doesn't matter the size of the organization, you can use it, or does you have to be a big organization or a tiny organization to use the tools and so on that there are in there? Yeah,
you know, good question. No, lean can be used from a startup company with one person. In fact, there's a very good book called Lean Startup, and the principles in building a new company with one person or one or two people, same principles applied. To some extent, the depth of the tools that you use may differ. So smaller companies may not be using the data analysis. They may not have the data. They may not be collecting the data that large companies are collecting. And therefore, some of the Lean Six Sigma tools may not be as applicable to small companies. But the general principles will apply. The principles of improvement, doing things as simple as possible, having a quality product, delivering it on time, and keeping your costs low will apply to any size business.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, from what you've just said as well, it kind of melds quite easily, and you know, with Agile, because Agile is the buzz thing at the moment.
Yes.
You know, working with Agile is, most organizations, small and medium, large, are all heading in there. Traditionally it was waterfall, but now heading to a mixture of waterfall and Agile, or completely Agile, depending on what they're trying to achieve, obviously.
Oh, there's great crossover in the principles of Agile and Lean Six Sigma. Absolutely. And Agile is focused on getting projects completed and helping change the culture to one in which it is easier to get successful projects done. Would you agree, Manjeet? It's very much a, you know, project oriented
Yeah.
discipline. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, initially it started off just in software, but now, as we know, it's
Yeah.
moved out of software and it's all over the organization.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's more about delivery of the projects, which is, what does lean add to the agile element of it then?
Yeah. Well, lean would add the element of problem solving and taking a problem from its understanding the root causes of problems before you start using Agile to potentially implement the solution. You could take Agile and use it to run a project from when a solution has been developed, designed, and you use it to implement that solution. So it involves the change management, the risk management, the iterative nature of improvement, adding value early, adding value on a regular basis in order to deliver your solution. Now, lean takes starts really before you would even come up with that solution or the design of the solution, because it wants to know the big picture of what the organizational objectives are. So
Yeah.
what is the value that we want to deliver at the end of this project? What are we trying to achieve for the customer? Focusing on the upstream elements of the business or the process. So some companies, I've heard this called left shift. In other words, we're shifting our mindset to the upstream, to the left of the page. If you show a process diagram, now too many projects, whether it's waterfall, whether it's agile, scrum, are getting focused on the solution before they understand the root causes.
Yeah.
Before they understand the system. I mean, it ties into systems thinking as well. You know, the big system. You can have a successful project and it will not, at the end of the day, add as much value to the organization as you think. It appears to be successful because it met original objectives.
Yeah.
But within the whole organization, the big picture of the business, the big picture of the overall process, did it create extra value? That's what you want to be asking.
Yeah, see, one of the things I find interesting about Lean Six Sigma is I've actually taken it out of the business field, the organizational field, and put together my own self-development methodology, which I now work with clients on. So there's so much of it which people automatically assume it's for big business or small business. They think it's a process, it's a methodology, it's a set of tools which purely only apply to the business world. But actually, take off the world business, take off IT, whatever you want to call it, and you can actually use it to improve your day-to-day, the way you're living, the way you're carrying out your own objectives, whatever you're trying to achieve on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. I've heard many times students of mine or companies that I've been in tell me that it's actually helped to improve not only the business, but their lives. The way they behave at home, the way they think about their leisure time even. It structures you better for more value in your life, not just in business. It can create value or optimize the value that's there for you.
Yeah, I mean, it can, because as I said, I've taken it and I've put together my own methodology and I work with my clients on that, and it's really, really useful, the tools that, you know, there are within the toolbox, as I call it, of Lean Six Sigma, that you can take out the ones that you need. And
yes, I'm dead against people that put too much structure around it, where they do not leave room for flexibility in Lean Six Sigma. There's more than one way to implement it, depending on the business problem, depending on the type of business you're in. You approach it differently depending on the business. And if you try to apply some Lean Six Sigma tools, techniques, and principles that you were using, for example, in a production line manufacturing environment, and you go into a service industry, a transactional industry such as finance or banking, you will find it doesn't work the same. It's not the same fit. You have to be experienced and smart about how to use it depending on what business you are applying it to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. It's not a one size fits all. It's a which bit fits with where.
Yes.
It's like having a jigsaw puzzle. It's finding the right pieces that actually come together so you can get to where you need to get to.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
John, if somebody wants to get hold of you and find out more about Lean Six Sigma, how can they get hold of you? Because, I mean, we could talk about this for hours. I know we can, and we have done in the past. But how can they actually get hold of you?
Well, I have a training business, but I'm actually involved heavily in a organization that promotes conferences, certifications, and the URL above, the ilssi.org. My email is actually just john@ilssi.org. For that organization, they can reach me through the International Lean Six Sigma Institute. And this is a good forum for people to meet people that are like-minded in Lean Six Sigma. It's a platform. It's a social group of people that are interested in making the most of these tools, techniques, and concepts. And I'd like to see you, Manjeet, in that group very soon. You know, if you can just get you in and start.
You are going to see me there very soon. You are.
Yeah,
I've organised myself, so I will have time now to come in and learn more, and hopefully be able to add to that group as well. So
I would love that. Yes, thank you.
Oh, definitely. So thank you so very much, John, for being here today. I've really appreciated it, and your knowledge, as I said, is so vast. We could talk about this for hours. So thank you very much for joining me, and thank you everybody watching.
Yes.
So I will see you next week for another interesting guest on the Corporate Show. So take care. Bye.
Thank you.